This is the mixing video of the song Now. So I've opened up the different return buses, and now you can see here the sends and returns. And I don't think we need the I/O here. I don't think that's going to be too important. And let's get started. So each of the instruments got their own sort of mixed treatment afterwards. I had left this song alone after I'd written it and recorded everything. I left it alone for about 3 years. And then I decided I should probably finish it. But what was cool is the month before I decided that, I had gotten a brand new plugin. And it is like a mixing desk channel strip plugin from an old console made by Focusrite. And I decided that I wanted to use it on every single track in the song to give it a feel like they were all recorded through the same mixing desk, which might have been a stupid decision, but I wanted to kind of indulge and try that out. So here's what it looks like. You're gonna see this plugin a lot in this video. You ready? So this is it. It's made by Brainworks through Plugin Alliance. And I used this channel strip with different settings, of course, for every single track in this song. And for the most part, what I can tell you happens across the board is almost every single track here, whether it's vocals, guitar, bass, or drums, got a little more high end. I think I had been in a phase in my life where I wasn't adding enough high end and my things were just sounding a little bit muffled, which can be cool in its own right. And there's a lot of lo-fi music like that that always sounds a little muffled, and it's a vibe and people like it and they play it. But I wanted this song to have a little more bite. So I was fine with what happened when I was going through different presets of this channel strip and then messing with mainly these two knobs here for the high mid frequency and low mid frequencies. And then I think also an in-gain knob is what I messed with a lot to give it some more crunch. So what's happening here in the vocals, what's happening here in the vocals, you could hear pretty easily if I just turn it off for you. And play a section of the song that would actually help you understand what's going on. Okay, let's put on the console. Probably not the greatest example now, I realize, because the volume changes so greatly. But that's part of what I wanted to use for this. I wanted to feed it a big hot signal and then see what would happen. So maybe what I can do here is I don't know if I'll regret this or not, but I can probably bump this up to 0 to give you the same volume, and then you can hear the sort of crispness that this imparts to it. So minus 4.9 is where it is. Okay, we'll remember that, minus 4.9. Let's now keep it at 0. Now let's listen to just the vocals. And with it. Cool. So there was already a drop in volume, and I think a lot of that is because it's being compressed through here as well. This is the compressor section here, and I have it enabled, which is why this light is on. But I liked the way that it felt being compressed. There's also there's also a filter on it. Man, there's a lot going on here, and I just sort of like let it all happen. I wasn't afraid of it getting over processed, but for the most part, that is the big difference that you're hearing. Let me bring it back to minus 4.9. There we go. And the other two big changes here, you've seen me use these plugins before. This is Fresh Air. I don't know if it's still free, but it was free when I got it. And I love this plugin. It is, again, imparting a little more high end or some fresh air to it. And you can hear the difference here. I like it. It helps things stand out. So I don't use it too much on basses. I might have in the past, but I don't use it too much on basses. But you bet I use it on vocals on almost every song now, even if it's just a tiny bit of it. I mean, if you think about it, look, I'm at 9% and 7% on the two different sections, the mids and the highs. I'm not using a ton of it, but it's just enough to give it a little more focus and, not focus, it brings a spotlight on it a little bit more. And then the last thing is Gullfoss. You've seen me use this too, probably many times. This is the automated EQ that is constantly balancing so as to either tame or accentuate certain aspects of the song. And the difference here is usually pretty subtle, but it helps once you apply it to the different channels. So let's just listen without it. I like it, which is why it stays on. Sometimes, you throw this stuff on and you're like, nope, not working. Beyond that, there is this EQ always. I talked about it in the composition video, but I'm always taking off some low end in this stuff. I know that these days it's like a meme of everybody saying, just like cut off everything on the low end, as an easy way of reducing the mud in the mix, but then you lose some of the body and the power. Well, these vocals are kind of like a high vocal anyway, so it doesn't need a lot of body. I mean, it'll be a different story when we reach the bass and the drums probably, but not here. And that's the vocals. I mean, straight up, like that's it. There's nothing else going on with the vocals. They are being sent to some buses here, so A, B, and E. So we talked about these before. This one is the big reverb, my big reverb bus. So crazy. I wrote this song so long ago that I was still using this reverb. This is a large factory setting from the built-in reverb in Ableton, and it's still pretty good. I mean, heck, I like how this song turned out, but I do not use it anymore as my big verb setting. For my big verb these days, I use the RC24 by Native Instruments that I showed in the composition video on some other tracks, just because it's so big and beautiful. Crazy. That's a little walk down memory lane. The delay, which I put on like everything, at least a little bit, is this one. It's called Tape Attempt. I think I've talked about it in another video, but I attempted using the stock plugins from Ableton to make something akin to a tape delay, because this is before Ableton had its built-in plugin called Echo that does a pretty good tape delay emulation right now. And if it's not obvious, I love tape delay. So it's a standard delay with some EQ on the outputs, some saturation on what's coming out, and then an LFO that is wobbling. It's the green dot, yeah. It's wobbling the drive of the saturator. So it changes how much it's feeding to it, and it's changing the frequency here of the EQ where it's moving around. So it's sort of like a tape spool is going through. Oh man, and that little wobbly LFO here, I know it seems really small, and it is really small, but there's a line basically like this. It's been stretched out that's moving subtly. It is moving the sync time between the left and the right delays on the first phase of this, the actual delay itself. And then I can adjust how much flutter, drive, or high end. I made this myself, okay? Like, go me. Go like me in 2013 or 2014 when I made this. Yeah, man. Damn. I went through a lot of work for that. And I used it on a ton of song ideas, maybe. I should just say. Nothing's on C, but Lil Verb is, once again, the Ableton built-in reverb. It's a smaller reverb that's shorter. The setting is, as opposed to the factory. Everything, almost everything goes into the duck bus, where it's all ducking really hard, the kick drum, and I can show you that here. Let's see. Let's find something that's going into it, and then we can continue the discussion of it. Guitars. So here you go. This 0 right here, if I go down and then I come up, means I'm sending a ton of it to this bus D, because A, B, C, D, E. So D. D is the duck one, D for duck. And I set this up to be receiving sidechain compression from, it's from a track that I named sidechain so that I couldn't screw it up. It's this one here at the very bottom. And all this one is, if you see these blocks here, it's just a kick drum. It's just, I mean, this isn't even like a complex drum kit. This is like the most simple, low-tech drum kit that comes in Ableton, Impulse, and then I just loaded up a kick sample that sounded good enough to me, that had enough length that I'd be able to play with the attack and release time of the sidechain compressor to make it pump either slower or faster, however I needed. This is what's providing the sidechain for the whole song. Look at this thing. It's just a block of just... I think sometimes I might make it like drop out for like a dramatic moment, but other than that, just like a dance song. Let's get to the guitars and continue talking about these. The other thing that happens, so tons of things are going to the duck bus. Let me see here. The bass is also, oh yeah, see, 0. It's being sent all the way, the 0 means you've sent all of it, to the duck bus as well. There's nothing else on these ones. There's a little bit of tinsel probably on something like the drums. Yeah, here you go. The last one, I talked about it in the last video, but just as a reminder, Decapitator by Sound Toys is a really intense setting, but if you use a little bit of it, just a little bit, it adds a little bit of sparkle, tinsel, to the top of whatever instrument you're feeding to it. So I use that to manage like the excitement level or the crispiness level in different parts of the song. And I go through it. Like I just listen to the song a bunch of times and I'm adjusting this knob and I'm automating it with this little line. You know, you draw little dots and you pull them up like a graph if you're not familiar with it. If you are, I don't mean to be condescending. But those are my buses. Those are the main buses that go in there. Let's talk now about that channel strip that's on the other ones, okay? So on the rhythm guitar, we had discussed that they were each going to get this same channel strip. This one has it as well. As you can tell, it's bumped a bit more in the high-mid frequency than the vocals were, because guitars have a lot of those high mids to it. That's where you get a lot of the twang, and this is a very twang guitar, like distorty overdrive type of sound, as opposed to like a jazz one that needs like boo 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 boo, some lower mids to it. I have the compressor working on it. I have a bit of gain going into it as well. I've adjusted the volume down by 10. I was probably feeding this thing really hot. Like, I was probably feeding it really hot, to be honest. Oh, I keep adjusting this thing. Should not do that. Let's listen to the guitars before and after I gave them this. Oh, no. Get out. I don't know what I was about to mess up. Okay. Let's listen to the guitars before and after we did this, and I will put the volume back up. This might be dramatic, and I'm sorry in advance if it's really loud. Finally. So I definitely had it impart a lot more high end, and that's how I liked it on the guitars. You can see before I got that plugin, this would have been a much muddier, lower sounding song, like for sure. The same thing is happening on the lead guitar, you should know that. And on the solo guitar, the same thing is happening. Oh, and I put fresh air on it. I won't unfreeze it for you here, but it's adding a little more high end to give it attention. On the bus overall, let's see what we're doing. Neutron, kind of my go-to mix one. I mean, hey, if you buy the plugin suite, use it. This one, I think I use a preset called Vintage Multiband. Maybe I changed some things, but it has an EQ that's just dipping here at 500 hertz. Again, sort of a meme, but 350 to 550, maybe even 600 hertz is sort of known as this boxy, muddy area. And a lot of people dip the frequencies out of a lot of instruments in that area, because once you have even just a couple competing in the 350 to 550 range, it immediately sounds like there's too much in your ear, like there's a lot going on, there's not enough room for the song to breathe. So this got a dip at 500. It just is what it is. They're not the priority. The vocals are probably the priority. And then a bump at 3200. This is probably because I gave a bump at a different area for the vocals that I didn't want to coexist with the guitar. So guitar, it got second seat to the vocals. And a compressor, a multiband compressor that's at different intensities for the low, mids, and the highs. Obviously compressing the most on the highs. You can see the threshold going lowest there. And then compressing the least for the lows, because there's not much to compress in the lows for these guitars. It's a lot of high notes. A very similar thing is probably happening in the bass bus. So let's go in here. Yep, so we have a big dip here on the equalizer. Let's see. Down here, the way that this dip has been achieved is by lifting the parts that weren't dipped instead. So around here, you can see the numbers. I'm between 350 and 600, and there's a dip there. What did I tell you? The compressor is standard, but there's a little bit of an exciter so that the bass can kind of stick out in your ear a little more. Let's hear it with and without these changes that I applied here. Without. With. Wow, that almost changed it like not at all. I bet you it's only noticeable whenever we're playing the rest of the songs that it's not conflicting with vocals and other drum parts, which is cool. It means that I was pretty happy and I was able to keep my original like sound that I had envisioned for the bass. Track spacer, you're going to see on other ones. This is the one that is like a multi-band sidechain compression that makes this track duck in response to when other tracks are playing, but not in that EDM pumpy sort of way, like like I do with the tracks anyway. This does it at the very end as a sort of finishing touch so that there's not a lot conflicting while you're listening to most of the song. Let's see. I can play it for you here. Let's see what it is. You can see it's only ducking in the area for where it's programmed to. And it's programmed to, if you look down here, it's programmed to the Vox channel, my vocals. So it's just ducking the vocals just to give the vocals a little more space and so they don't have to fight against the bass guitar on top of everything else. Same is probably happening in the drums. Well, I mean, this is the last one, so let's go into this. So the drums, there is the channel strip here for the drums as well, and I'm lowering it by how many? -6.8. Let's see the difference here with the drums. Let's just listen to the drum bus. Let's do it without it. I'll adjust the volume. Oh, that was noticeable. I love that. It gets way tighter in the high end. Yeah, that one's great. I like that a lot. What was I at? Was I at like -6 or something like that? Oh man, I wish I would have remembered. I think I was at -6.7. Whatever, I'll reset this whole project file later, so don't worry about it. That's for me to worry about. And then there's fresh air on it as well. Let's hear it. Can really hear it in the hi-hats. Really nice. Damn, I'm really happy with that, actually. Okay, what's happening on the drums bus entirely, which just includes the resample things that I had done, it's not too much more complicated than that, is some neutron as well. The EQ here, we're dipping at 720. That's a surprise. It must have just been a problem area for me. And then we're effectively boosting everywhere else, but really just dipping right here in this spot compared to everywhere else, and then cutting off sharply at 30 hertz. Kind of standard practice. There's a compressor here, standard practice to just limit it so that it's not so brutal once we get to the mastering phase. Here is where a lot of flavor happens though. This, the Shadow Hills mastering compressor, should just be used in the mastering phase, and you shouldn't be using it on an individual track. Should, would, could, whatever, man. Like I said, it's the digital realm. You can do whatever the hell you want. So let's go. You're gonna hear how how dramatic. I mean, I hope this is not like a anticlimactic moment, but I think I used some dramatic settings on this. Maybe not too dramatic, but it is making it a little more pronounced and a little more punchy thumpy on the kick drum especially, which is a thing that I always really want. Again, because EDM, baby. This has that same track spacer that I showed you on the bass guitar, and it is not linked to just the vocal chain. It's also linked, there's a second one that is linked to the guitar solo, so that the guitar solo didn't have to compete with the drums either. So it would really duck underneath the guitar solo as well. And I can have you hear that part right here. Let's hear it all. So it's ducking and it's giving it room there. And it's only a little too, because look at the amount knob. Look at this big ass knob. I have the amount set to 3.5% out of 100%. Subtle, subtle, baby. Everything's subtle. That is actually it. That's it for the mixing of this. That's all it took, because I only had so few elements. Look, when I collapse all these things, vocals, guitars, I guess the guitar solo if you want to count separately, the bass, and the drums. Those are the only things you're hearing. This side chain is just being fed to make fed into all the other tracks that they'll duck. There's really only 5 elements, and if you consider the guitar solo just another guitar, there's only 4 elements. This is like a rock band just playing this song for you, which is why it was, just in my opinion, it was easier to mix than a lot of other songs that I've done, which you will see in the future, were a lot harder to mix. This master stuff, I mentioned before, I usually just have placeholders here so that I can hear what it might sound like once I hit mastering stage, and I turn them on enough just to check loudness levels, but they're not part of what ended up being the final product. This was what was the final product. I mean, you saw it. I just leaned in heavily to the stuff that I already had, and then used this channel strip on everything to just make everything brighter. And I was really happy. It might actually be, when I play it all through the master right now, it might actually be brighter than what the final product ended up being, but that means I probably just took some sparkle out during mastering to sort of tame it. But this is how it is right here. And I believed in the new plugin,